All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Lovely to see everyone here in Year 12. Today we're going to have a Sejong lecture from guest speaker, Dr. Elizabeth Schnobrich. We are very lucky to have her. She's a practicing licensed clinical psychologist who's been doing that job and working in that field for over 15 years. So she's has an incredible wealth of experience to share with you today. So she's going to be talking about stress and anxiety, a very important topic for people of all ages. And she's on the screen here. Let me just check if she can hear. Hi, Elizabeth. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so I'm going to hand over to you now, Dr. Schnobrich, if you could start your talk when you're ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So my name is Dr. Schnobrich. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I was trained in the United States, and I currently work at Adaptable Human Solutions, which is located in Seoul. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about anxiety and worry and stress, especially for teenagers. So I'm going to talk about what is it, what we can do about it, and what does some of the research say. And then at the end, I'll leave time for questions as well. So first, what is it? Well, anxiety, worry, and stress are all part of being human. Worry is a form of protection that keeps you alert, allows you to react quickly to danger. Worry's been around compared to humans began. Worry was around back in the caveman and woman days when they needed to be aware of things like the saber-toothed tiger and respond quickly to signs that the tiger was around. A little worry is a good thing because it can protect you. For example, being worried about a hot stove protects you from touching the stove and burning yourself. Now, we have two parts of our brain. We have the frontal lobe, part right here, and this is the thinking part of our brain. And then we have the animal part of our brain, which is back here. So this is our brain. This is the part of our brain that is the fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain. And it's important to know the difference because how we respond to anxiety or worry or stress depends on which part of the brain takes in the information and acts first. So what separates us from animals is because we have this frontal lobe. We actually got this part, the hind part, we call it the animal brain, from animals. So when animals respond to stress or worry, they always fight, flight, or freeze. Well, we have the benefit of being able to use our frontal lobe, which is the logical, rational thinking part of your brain. For example, this is the part of the brain that you use when you study for a test. The animal part of our brain, which again is back here, is the part that watches out for danger and is supposed to put you on alert when there's danger. When worry leads to anxiety, it becomes a problem because the animal part of our brain is activated even when there isn't an actual threat. So our brain can't tell the difference between the saber-toothed tiger that we need to run away from and find safety in the cave or the fear or worry of failing a test. So when anxiety and worry take over, the animal part of our brain takes over and we lose the frontal lobe, which again is the thinking, logical, rational part of our brain. So how does stress play into all of this? Stress tends to have a very specific origin. So it tends to be caused by something. So for example, studying for a test. Taking a test might be perceived by your brain as a threat. The fear of failing the test, the fear of being a disappointment, the fear of doing a bad job. All of those these specific stressors that cause a freeze response in the brain. So what happens, back to the test example, is we sit down to take our test, we study for the test, we know the test, but all of a sudden we read the first question and we're unsure. And it activates the hind part of the brain, again, the fight, flight, or freeze response. Your brain sees that or feels that as a threat. Danger, 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 must act, alert, alert, alert. And all the blood goes from our frontal lobe, which is, again, our thinking, rational part of our brain, floods back to the hind part, back part of our brain. And our mind goes blank with the freeze response. Or you might feel an overwhelming desire to run away, which is the flight response. So what happens when stress plays a role is our brain stops paying attention to the rational, logical part and activates the animal part. And this really becomes a problem when we're exposed to constant stress. So we can handle a stressor at a time for example, the test. We can manage how to deal with that one stress. When we are exposed to constant stressors or ongoing stressors, that tends to be a problem because we're trying to deal with it. Our brains and our bodies were built to be exposed to one stressor, this is tiger, we run away, or we fight, flight, or freeze, depending on what's safest, and then we're done with it. So stress becomes a problem when it's constant, and we get into a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, and that's when anxiety can become more of a problem. So what do we do about it? So I'm going to give you 3 strategies. There's more strategies. I'm going to start with 3 for today. If you find yourself struggling with ongoing anxiety or stress and you feel like you need more strategies, then it might be a good idea to reach out and talk to someone as well. But the first strategy is called square breathing. And it's called square breathing because you imagine a square and you inhale for 5 seconds. So inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You hold your breath for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let it out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you hold it at the bottom for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you keep breathing in that square. So inhale for 5, hold for 5, exhale for 5, hold for 5. Again, inhale for 5, hold for 5. And you keep going until you start to feel yourself release. So that's an example of square breathing. There's other breathing techniques. That one's a really easy one to do because you can do that sitting at your desk. You can do that around friends, and it's not an obvious thing that you're doing. The second technique is when you have a worry coming up. So let's go back to the test example. Let's say you have a test and you're starting to worry about, what if I fail this? I don't know if I know myself. What am I going to do? The next example is to do what's called a best, worst, likely chart. So back to the test example. Let's say I'm worried about failing my math test. If I was going to do this chart, I would, at the top of the chart, I would write best case scenario, worst case scenario, and most likely scenario. And in the best case scenario, I would take the test, I would get 100%, and I would do very, very well. Worst case scenario, I get a failing grade, I fail the test, and I bomb out, and I get kicked out of school. And then the likely part is where you would fill in what's most likely to happen. Well, I've been really, really hard in math and I've been studying, so I'm likely to do okay, at least a B. And that can be a really good way to kind of really separate out the worry from the reality. And let's say back to my potential fail test. Let's say I haven't been studying and I haven't been working very well in math and I've really been struggling and I do the best, worst, likely chart. This again, I worst, fail, and I go to the math class. Likely, oh, well, maybe I need to work a little harder because right now I'm maybe not going to do as well. Maybe I'll only get a C, but maybe I can have the teacher get a little help. And so that it can also help to come up with a plan by looking at what is most likely. The third strategy is a way to stay in your frontal lobe using mindfulness. So again, we have our hindbrain and our frontal lobe. They don't operate at the same time. It's one or the other. When your brain senses a threat, all the blood goes to the back and literally shuts us down. They've done research where they can do brain imaging and they've shown how the activity goes away and it all goes back here. So if all your activity is back here, that means all your thoughts, logic, and rational capabilities, problem solving, all of that is one. So we want to stay. The best way to deal with stress and anxiety and worries is to keep in the frontal lobe. And one way to do that is to use mindfulness. And one of the easiest techniques, and again, this is something that you can do without anybody knowing, you can do that while sitting at your desk, is to use the 5 senses. So as you're feeling yourself become more worried, as you're feeling the back part of your brain get activated, you can bring yourself back to the frontal lobe with mindfulness by making a mental list of the things that you can see, feel, hear, smell, and touch. So you can, what do you feel in your skin? Is it hot? Is it cold? Are you sweating? What can you see? What can you do? You hear any noises? Can you smell anything? What is the touch? what is the touch on your skin? Can you taste anything? Can you taste gum or breakfast or toothpaste? Anytime any of those things will bring you back to the frontal lobe. So those are 3 potential strategies that you could try. Last, I'm going to talk a little bit about all the research that's been done. We've done tons of research on stress and worry and anxiety especially in teenagers. And with that, we've learned a couple of things. So the best way to combat worry, stress, and anxiety is through what's called resiliency. And what's great about resiliency is it's a skill that you can learn. And anxiety and worry don't have to dominate your life. You can develop resiliency skills to combat it. And in all of our research, we found that there are 3 common lies that anxiety causes teens to tell themselves. And I'm going to briefly tell you what the lie is and how to combat it. And then I'll be open for questions. So the first lie is that you must constantly question the future. And this is where the what ifs come in. So that's where what if I fail my test? What if I get kicked out of school? What if nobody likes me? What if I have no friends? All these what if. The best way to combat this is to set goals and plan for future obstacles. When you're going through the what ifing with your brain is actually trying to come up with potential obstacles. So instead of letting your brain go wild and activate your hindbrain, the best thing to do is to come up with a plan and then plan for the obstacles that may come into place. So back to the example of failing the test. Okay, I'm worried that I'm going to fail my test. So to come up with a plan, I want to use an if-then plan. So back to the what if. So my worry is, what if I fail my test and my mind goes blank? So if I get my test and my mind goes blank, then I'm going to practice my square breathing and my mindfulness. You want to write down the plan. So when you find yourself doing the thing, stop the what if thing and come up with an if-then plan. So if this happens, then I'm going to do this. And that can kind of help quiet those what ifs. The second lie that anxiety tells teens is that you can't handle it. And this is a very common one. And what we found the best way to deal with it is to actually create a character of your worry. It's not who you are, it's just a part of you. And I don't know if any of you saw the movie Inside Out. That's a really great example of the different characters that we have. We have the worry side, we have the happy side, we have the joyful side, we have the sad side, we have the angry side. The worry is just one part. And it can be really helpful to come up with a character. And you can take the character from the Disney show Inside Out, or maybe pick up a different character from a show or movie that you like. And you can have conversations with the worry and recognize you are just one opinion. And maybe the worry has a point, but maybe it doesn't. And you can have a conversation with your worry about whether or not the threat is real. And if the threat is not real, if the threat is not real, you can tell the worry, you know what, you can go away. This isn't true. So that's a way to work with the lie, you can't handle it. The third lie is this feeling is going to last forever. According to the research, as well as my professional and personal experience, is feelings never last forever. You might be happy at some time, but you're not always happy. You might be sad sometimes, but you're not always sad. Same thing with worry and anxiety. They are meant to come in and they send a message and then they leave. They're not meant to stay. The most important thing to remember, if you remember anything with everything I talked about, the most important thing to remember is this too shall pass. And if you can keep that in the frontal lobe, then you can handle any stress and anxiety that comes up. Any questions?
Oh, okay, all right. Sorry about the sound and the visuals there, but hopefully we should have a few minutes to ask some questions. So, psychology students, where are you? Ginger, hi.
This is a question about your point where chronic stress would affect one's prefrontal cortex behavior. If a cultural element, such as honor killing, induces constant stress to a group of cultural people, then would the future generations be immune to the type of stress, or is it just creating collective trauma?
I'm hearing kind of a feedback and echo, so I could only pick up a little bit. I heard like stress and culture, but I missed the question. I could hear the question again. And I think the microphone is causing kind of a...
Hi, so yeah,
echo?
the question was about if a cultural element constantly causes stress, well, how might that affect future generations? Could it affect the, any change? Could they adapt to that from constant stress in past generations in certain cultures?
Okay, I think I'll try to answer what I think I grasped from that, and if I'm wrong, if I missed the point, please restate. But I think I'm hearing is a cultural element to stress, and maybe a generational element, and I would say yes. What we are finding with the research is that there's been a steady increase in stress and anxiety with the generations, meaning that your generation is kind of, at the top, and maybe the generation behind you continues. There's a lot of um, reasons why that I won't go into at this exact moment in time because I think it will take up a lot of time, but there definitely seems to be an increase in stress and anxiety. And I think what that's telling us, one part is that social media is a part of stress and anxiety. The constant access to information and news is a source of stress and anxiety. And I think that what that tells us is we need to work harder at being more intentional about resiliency and combating it head on. And your generation is at a really good place to start that and really take it seriously. And I think previous generations, they didn't know what anxiety was. People who are in the older 60s, 70s, 80s, they don't even know what anxiety is. They don't even know what it means. And your generation is in a really good place to understand it and then do something about it. I'm
Okay,
not sure if that answered the question.
thank you. We're just going to go to the next question.
Hi, I'm not a psychology student, so I'm not an expert on this. But as I understood it, when stress kicks in, the blood from your frontal cortex goes to the back of your brain, and your capacity for rational thinking, what we say, it decreases. So when that happens, are there any particular skills that are more affected than other skills? So like, okay, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I've heard that you're using different parts of your brain depending on the type of subject that you're studying in. So I was wondering if stress had a particularly greater impact on particular skills like, I don't know, mathematical thinking more than it does to literary thinking.
So that's a question. And psychology student or not, you seem to pick up things excellent. So don't worry about that part. So you had a couple things in there. So yes, you're absolutely right. When rational thinking, logical thinking, problem solving, all that's here, frontal lobe, hindbrain, and that's way back here. So our animal brain is actually not part of the brain that we would use for any of our, our language side versus our math side, like left brain, right brain. That's actually, it's way back where our spinal cord connects to our cerebellum, and so it's way back there. So our animal brain, like we lose all of it. We lose all. So it's what happens. And I won't go to too much detail, but what happens is our sympathetic nervous system is activated, and that what that gives us is it gives us a big burst of adrenaline and norepinephrine and all those good things that allow us again to run away from the saber-toothed tiger. The same part of our system that you've heard of these crazy superhuman strengths, like mothers lifting cars off of babies. So it activates that part of our brain. It doesn't so much matter what you're studying; it's how you feel about what you're studying. So if you feel really good about math, you're probably not going to activate your hindbrain when you take a math test. But let's say you really struggle with reading, and so maybe literature would activate it, or vice versa. So it's more about the stress and anxiety you feel about a specific subject rather than the specific subject itself.
Okay, I think we have time for one last quick question, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
In regards to the strategies you have told to manage stress, is there a specific strategy that you recommend to students like us who are currently in kind of stressful time?
Yeah. So they all work. It's a matter of the best thing you can do is kind of test it out for yourself. Some people really like breathing and breathing exercises. Some people like the mindfulness. Some people like writing things down. The most important thing, because you guys are in a pretty high stress environment regularly, because you're in a very academic, demanding environment, is that you pay really close attention to the stress level of your body. So when you start to feel the stress build up, because let's say it's coming close to finals, which I guess it probably is, or end of the term, where you have all these things going on, you often have to do more things. You have to be more aware of it. And that's where exercise is a really good strategy when you start to feel that stress build up, taking breaks, taking care of yourself, eating well, getting good sleep. So pulling all-nighters is never a good idea. It actually does not help your studying or brain power in any way, shape, or form. So taking really good care of your body helps your body manage the stress better. And then when you start to feel that anxiety or that worry, that's when it's important that you implement the strategies. And it's something that you should be doing on a regular basis as you're feeling yourself get anxious. And then pay really close attention on when your frontal lobe is activated versus your hindbrain. So your hindbrain is that fight, flight, or freeze. When you're feeling that agitation, like you need to do something, like run away, freeze, hide, or fight, then that's telling you that that's activated and you need to bring it back to here so you can think logically and rationally.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth. If we could give a round of applause to show our appreciation, and we'll finish there.
Thank you. Yep, bye-bye.